Many truths, one search. The fourth principle of Unitarian Universalism calls us to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. But this principle contains a paradox. The more freely we search for truth, the more we discover that truth itself is not one thing. Truth functions differently in science than in poetry, in mathematics than in ethics, in history than in art. Our search for truth leads us to discover that truth itself is plural. This morning, I want to explore what this means to search for truth in a world where truth comes in multiple forms, drawing on the political and ethical framework developed by American political theorist William E. Connolly, which he terms deep pluralism, and the philosophy of Paul Tillich, to suggest that our fourth principle isn't about finding one unified answer, it's about learning to navigate multiple legitimate ways of being true. The failure of one size fits all. When we say something is true, what do we mean? The answer depends on what we're talking about. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius is true because it corresponds to observable reality. We can test and measure it. But a statement like all people have inherent worth and dignity is also true, though not in the same way. We can't put dignity under a microscope, yet we commit our lives on this truth. Or when someone says, this poem is true to my experience, what kind of truth is that? Not scientific, not moral, but aesthetic truth that reveals rather than proves. Deep pluralism suggests that we stop trying to unify all truth. Instead, recognize that different domains legitimately employ different truth concepts. In science, truth often means correspondence. Hypotheses accurately map onto observable phenomena. But science also has pragmatic elements. Theories are accepted when they successfully predict and enable intervention. In mathematics, truth functions like coherence. Statements are true when they follow logically from axioms, like the Pythagorean theorem. But mathematicians also speak of deep truths, concepts like zero, that enabled calculus and modern physics, opening entirely new landscapes of possibility. In ethics, moral principles are true when they enable human flourishing. Legal truth is procedurally defined. Historical truth combines what happened with interpretive frameworks. Aesthetic truth reveals possibilities rather than corresponding to reality. We already live this plurality. Scientists, judges, historians, and artists operate with different truth concepts on a daily basis. The question is whether we can do so consciously and responsibly. Sorry, I got myself ahead here a little bit. 20th century existentialist philosopher and theologian Paul Tillich argued that religion or religious truth operates according to its own logic, neither scientific nor simply emotional, but existential. Tillich defined faith as a state of being ultimately concerned. Faith means being grasped by something that concerns you unconditionally. Everyone has some ultimate concern, whether God, justice, love, nation, or enlightenment. that organizes and gives meaning to existence. He distinguished between authentic faith directed towards what is truly ultimate and idolatrous faith, which treats something finite as if it were infinite. When we make wealth or power our ultimate concern, we commit idolatry. Finite things cannot bear the weight of ultimate meaning. Crucially, Tillich insisted that genuine faith includes doubt. Doubt isn't the opposite of faith, it is an element of faith. Faith is the courage to affirm meaning despite the threat of meaninglessness. This might sound like relativism if different domains have different truths. Is any belief as good as any other? If all truths are relative, there is no objective standard by which to measure reality, making it impossible to rely on the consistent laws governing science, engineering, or a shared legal system. For example, no one truly acts like a relativist when they visit a doctor or board a plane, as they rely on the objective facts and the physical laws in place. Within each domain, there are standards for better and worse. Scientific theories can be well supported or poorly supported. Ethical arguments can be more or less coherent. Pluralism is not anything goes. Deep pluralism makes a positive claim about existence. Reality itself is characterized by plurality, becoming an irreducible difference. Genuine pluralism generates ethical pressure towards engagement rather than elimination. A monist view that there's one true account generates pressure towards conquest or conversion. If you experience existence as a gift rather than burden, and recognize that gift as irreducibly plural, certain stances become more consonant with that experience than others. For instance, generosity over resentment, engagement over elimination. Some truths, like basic logical truths, might be universal across domains. Though even here, reality has surprised us. At the quantum level, particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, and remain instantaneously correlated across any distance. Behaviors that violate our deepest intuitions about how reality should work. So even our most fundamental truths then should be held with intellectual humility. But here's an important challenge. How do we decide which truth mode applies when? Consider climate change. Is this purely a scientific question about atmospheric chemistry and temperature data? Or is it also a moral question about our obligations to creation and future generations? Or a political question about justice and responsibility? The answer, of course, is that it's all of these. Complex real-world issues don't fit neatly into one domain. This is where a principle becomes not just free, but responsible. A free search means we don't let any single authority, scientific, religious, or otherwise, dictate what counts as truth everywhere. A responsible search means that we learn to discern which modes of truth are appropriate where, and how they interact with each other. And so does in Buddhism, practitioners engage in zazen, sitting meditation. The instruction is simple: sit upright, breathe naturally, let thoughts pass without grasping. The practice doesn't aim at achieving some special state, As Zen Master Dogen Zenzi taught, Zazen is not a means to enlightenment. Zazen itself is enlightenment. If you approach this with scientific truth criteria, you might study neurological effects. Neuroscience has found that meditation affects brain patterns, reduces stress, enhances attention, and that's scientifically true and valuable. But Zen operates according to a different truth logic. The Zen truth of Zazen isn't about brain states. It's about directly realizing your Buddha nature. When Dogen wrote, "To study the self is to forget the self," he wasn't making a psychological claim to be verified empirically. He was pointing to a transformative insight that emerges through practice itself. The truth of Zazen is performative, truth in the doing. Neuroscience and Zen aren't contradictory, they address different questions. A responsible search embraces both modes of truth, each appropriate to its domain. Scientific truth aims at predictive accuracy. Religious truth aims at existential orientation and transformational experience. These are different truth projects, not competing descriptions. Consider consciousness. Neuroscience offers causal functional truths. Buddhism offers phenomenological practical truths about the constructed self. Christianity offers narrative theological truths about humankind being in the image of God. These aren't contradictory, they're different modes using consciousness as their object. Problems arise when category mistakes occur, when creationists treat Genesis as competing with evolutionary biology. They've imported scientific criteria into text operating by a totally different logic. When materialists claim neuroscience proves religious experience is nothing but brain states, they assume empirical descriptions exhaust reality. But both moves are errors, not because one side is right, but because they're applying truth criteria from one domain to claims operating in another. How do we navigate this plurality? With what the Greeks called phronesis, practical wisdom. First, become fluent with multiple truth modes. Like multilingual speakers, learn to shift between empirical, ethical, aesthetic, spiritual registers without contradiction. A responsible search means discerning which modes apply where, and no single authority, scientific or religious, dictates truth everywhere. Second, practice collaborative translation. Buddhist mindfulness has been brought into therapeutic contexts while maintaining connection to deeper sources. When someone struggles with depression, do they need medication, spiritual counsel, or both? No algorithm decides. We need each other, bringing diverse gifts to shared questions. Third, embrace productive tension and doubt. Some conflicts between frameworks push both towards greater sophistication. And if truth is genuinely plural, none of us holds the whole picture. The courage to keep searching despite uncertainty is itself an act of faith. Finally, remember the search is never finished. There's no moment of arrival. The searching itself shapes who we become. This is what our principle asks of us, not answers, but the ongoing practice of seeking. I began by noting the paradox. The free search for truth leads us to discover that truth itself is plural. But perhaps it's not really a paradox. Perhaps it's exactly what it should be. If reality is infinitely rich, if human experience encompasses quantum mechanics to mystical union, mathematical proofs to moral struggle, why should we expect one simple theory to capture it all? The plurality of truth is a sign of reality's abundance, its complexity. Our fourth principle calls us to a free and responsible search. In a world of multiple and plural truths, multiple domains, freedom means refusing to let any single authority dictate what counts as true. Responsibility means learning to navigate multiple truth modes with wisdom. Together they call us to courage, the courage to be truthful in multiple ways, to search without guarantees, to affirm meaning in a complex world. This is our gift as Unitarian Universalists. We don't offer simple answers. We offer a community of seekers who take truth seriously enough to recognize its plurality, who respect both scientific rigor and spiritual depth. The search for truth and meaning isn't a problem to solve, it's a practice to live. We live it together, bringing diverse ways of knowing into conversation, learning from each other, remaining open to truths we haven't yet imagined. May our search be both free and responsible. May we have the courage to embrace truth's plurality, and may we continue always to search together. Thank you.